Give me liberty or give me death. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Ask not what your country can do for you.
77 years ago,
America was built on courage, on imagination. The American flag is the most recognized symbol of freedom and democracy in the world.
Small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The moon is 238,855 miles from Earth, on average. The orbit is elliptical, but that's the number. 250,000 miles of vacuum, radiation, and silence separates the surface of this planet from the surface of our moon. No atmosphere on arrival, no GPS, no rescue if something goes wrong, no second chances. On July 16, 1969, at 9:32 in the morning, 3 American men sat inside a capsule atop a rocket and waited to go. They got there. And the story of how that happened, the people, the decisions, the technology, the near disasters, and the genius that ran through all of it like a live wire is one of the defining stories of the American experiment. Not because it was a government achievement, because it was a human one, produced by a particular kind of human culture, competitive, improvisational, technically rigorous, and philosophically free. This is that story. On September 12, 1962, President John F. Kennedy stood before 35,000 people in a football stadium at Rice University. He spoke words that set everything in motion.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
You have to understand what he was saying. There was no rocket capable of reaching the moon. There was no spacecraft designed to land on it. There was no computer small enough to guide it. No software that knew how to navigate between worlds, no plan for what to do if something failed, but when something failed, in the void between here and there. Kennedy was, in other words, making a bet on the character of the American people. He understood something fundamental about the free market of ideas. It works fastest when the stakes are highest and when the problem is hardest. And he was right. The Apollo program, from Kennedy's declaration to the last lunar mission in 1972, cost $25 billion, roughly $189 billion in today's dollars. At its peak, the program employed 400,000 people and required the support of over 20,000 industrial firms and universities. And remember that number, 400,000. Remember what it actually represents. We're talking about programmers, welders, machinists, inspectors, and mathematicians. Each of them owned a piece of the mission, and almost none of the actual work was done by the government. Boeing built the first stage of Saturn V at the North American Aviation Facility, where it also built the command and service modules. Grumman built the lunar module. MIT's instrumentation laboratory wrote the flight software. Rocketdyne built the rocket engines. The government set the goal, held the contracts, and provided the funding. However, American industry and American universities provided the solution. That is the free market of ideas, and it landed Americans on the moon. Before we talk about the navigation and mission control, we have to talk about the rocket. The Saturn V stood 363 feet tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty, with room to spare. Fully fueled, it weighed 6.5 million pounds. At launch, its 5 F1 engines generated a combined thrust of 7.5 million pounds of force. The sound at launch was not just audible, it was physical. Observers miles away felt it in their chests. It flew 13 times between 1967 and 1973. It never failed to reach orbit, not once. The first test of the complete 3-stage Saturn V Apollo 4 rocket in November 1967 was what they called an all-up test. No incremental component testing, no conservative sequential buildup. Test the entire vehicle all at once, and it worked. Now that decision, trust your engineers, test at full scale, move fast, is not a bureaucratic instinct. It's an engineering culture instinct, born of years of competitive problem solving in American aerospace. And that distinction matters enormously. In 1960, the term software engineer had not been coined. The field had not been named. A young MIT mathematician named Margaret Hamilton was working on air defense systems when she was recruited to write code for the Apollo guidance computer. She would eventually lead the team that developed the entire onboard flight software for the Apollo program. And she would coin the term software engineering, and that was a deliberate philosophical statement. The work is not programming, it's engineering. It requires the same rigor, the same discipline, and the same accountability as any physical system. Now, the Apollo guidance computer itself was the first computer built using silicon integrated circuits. It had 36 kilowords of fixed memory and 2 kilowords of erasable memory. By comparison, a modern smartphone has billions of times more computational power. And yet the AGC could guide a spacecraft from Earth orbit to the lunar surface and back again, managing thrusters, interpreting astronaut inputs, and prioritizing tasks in real time under conditions of extreme resource constraint. That is not a minor engineering accomplishment. That is one of the most remarkable feats of applied intelligence in human history. July 20th, 1969. The Eagle, Apollo 11's lunar module, is powered in descent, 50,000 feet above the surface of the moon and dropping. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are 3 minutes from making history, and then the computer throws an alarm. In mission control, flight controllers freeze. The alarm code means program overflow. The computer's being asked to do more than it can handle simultaneously. The rendezvous radar had been left active to allow data monitoring, and it was eating compute. No procedure in the astronauts' training manuals covered this alarm in descent. Most alarm codes, of course, would require an abort. Flight Director Gene Kranz turned to his guidance officer, Steve Bales. Bales called to his back room, a man named Jack Garman. He was a young NASA engineer, 24 years old. Now here's the point I want you to appreciate about what happened next. Garman had studied every possible alarm code. He had written a reference sheet, every code, what it meant, and what action it required. He knew that the 1202 error meant the computer was dumping low-priority tasks to protect critical navigation functions, exactly what it was designed to do. The guidance system was still working. The descent was controlled. The alarm was not a failure. It was the software doing its job under pressure. Garman's answer came back in seconds. We are a go. Bales relayed that to Kranz. Kranz relayed that to Capcom. Capcom relayed that to the crew. You are a go. The 1202 alarm triggered 4 more times on the way down. Each time, Garman's answer never changed. At 4:17 p.m. Eastern Time, the Eagle landed in the Sea of Tranquility, with approximately 25 seconds of descent fuel remaining.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The lesson here is not just technical, and that's the important point. It's cultural. A 24-year-old engineer's judgment made possible by the trust that Gene Kranz had placed into his mission control culture. The hierarchy trusted the expert at the edge of the system. That is not how rigid bureaucracies work. That is how the free market of ideas work under extreme conditions. No story of Apollo is complete without a serious look at the culture of mission control. Gene Kranz served as the flight director for Apollo 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and finally 17. He built his team around principles that had nothing to do with title or seniority, and everything to do with competence, preparation, and accountability. Every flight controller owned their system completely. The guidance officer owned guidance. The flight surgeon owned the crew's biomedical data. Nobody waited for someone else to diagnose a problem in their domain. They diagnosed it, reported it, and gave their recommendation. Kranz made the final call, but that call was only as good as the intelligence his team gave him. The phrase, "failure is not an option," was not a slogan, it was doctrine. It meant before the mission launches, identify every failure mode you can imagine and have a plan for it. And when something happens that you didn't imagine, and something always does, you improvise, you trust your people, and you do not stop. April 13th, 1970, 200,000 miles from Earth. At 55 hours and 46 minutes into the flight of Apollo 13, an oxygen tank in the service module exploded. Now, the cause of the explosion was a design modification made back in 1965, a modification that raised the permissible voltage to the oxygen tank heaters, but the thermostatic switches had not been updated to match. Years later, during a ground test, the tank had been overheated for 8 hours. The wiring inside was damaged. No one knew how. At 9:08 p.m. on April 13th, the tank blew. The command module lost 2 of its 3 fuel cells. Both oxygen tanks, the source of breathing air and electrical power, were failing. The decision? Moved to the lunar module. The Aquarius had been designed for 45 hours of life support for 2 people. It now had to support 3 people for 90 hours. Power was rationed to 1/5 of normal. The spacecraft dropped to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Water was rationed to 6 ounces per person per day. And then the carbon dioxide became the next crisis. The lunar module's CO2 scrubbers, lithium hydroxide canisters, they were round. The command module's spare canisters were square, physically incompatible. In mission control, engineers emptied their desks, gathered plastic bags, cardboard, and duct tape, mimicking the materials aboard the spacecraft. They then built a makeshift adapter on the ground. Then talked to the crew about building the same device in the dark with numb fingers in a spacecraft slowly filling with CO2. And it worked. With the guidance computer star tracker blocked by debris, the crew used the sun itself as a navigational reference, sighting through the alignment optical telescope to achieve a trajectory correction accurate to less than 1/2 of a degree. Before re-entry, a new power-up procedure for the command module had to be written from scratch. The normal procedure required 3 months and a team of engineers. Mission control, they did it in 3 days. On April 17, 1970, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The USS Iwo Jima was waiting. All 3 men were alive. NASA called Apollo 13 a successful failure. Although the mission failed to land on the moon, it succeeded at bringing home 3 men against all odds, and by any rational accounting, that should not have permitted it. The difference was engineering culture, the discipline to prepare for what you could imagine, and the ingenuity to solve what you could not. On December 24, 1968, Apollo 8 had become the first crewed spacecraft to orbit the moon. Commander Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders are on their 9th orbit, 69 miles above the lunar surface, during a live television broadcast. Bill Anders reads first from the King James Bible in Genesis 1:1.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep.
Lovell reads next. Then Borman closes.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
1 in 4 people on Earth was watching or listening, roughly 1 billion people across 64 countries. The choice to read from Genesis was not casual. The suggestion came from Christine Layton, who was a teenager that had been a member of the French resistance during the Nazi occupation of Paris. The idea that traveled from a young French girl risking her life under occupation through decades of time to 3 American astronauts reading the first verses of human civilization from the orbit of the moon. That is, in its own profound way, a story about what the American experiment connects to. About the long line of human courage, human endurance, and human reaching that produced the moment when men first circled another world and looked back at this one. Here's what the moon landing proves about the American experiment. The founders built a system that trusts the individual, that believes the individual. Given the freedom and purpose and the right of a competitive environment, will exceed the ambitions of any centralized authority. The free market of ideas, diverse minds, competing methods, open critique, merit-based advancement will always produce better solutions than any hierarchy can impose or mandate from above. The Apollo program was that thesis at maximum resolution. 400,000 people, 20,000 firms and universities, a 24-year-old engineer trusted to keep a lunar module flying, a young mathematician who coined a new discipline because she refused to accept that what she was doing was anything less than engineering, a flight director who wore a vest stitched by his wife and built a culture where the right answer mattered more than rank. None of them were told to be extraordinary, they just were. At Spartan Forge, the people who fly by night, navigate by landmarks, and carry American-made gear into terrain where second chances do not exist are the direct heirs to this culture. The mission discipline, terrain awareness, navigation precision, and the refusal to quit that landed humans on the moon are the same qualities that distinguish excellence in any high-stakes human endeavor. The Forge still produces. The footprints are still there. 250 years into this experiment, the Sea of Tranquility still holds the footprints of the 2 American men and the shadow of the plaque they left behind. On it are these words: "We came in peace for all mankind." The sentence is true, but it was not inevitable. It was earned by engineers who worked through the night, by flight controllers who rewrote procedures in 3 days, by workers who stayed on the line for the 2nd and 3rd shift. This is for them.